Adebo efe anuncho drolo ke mobonalo manche kujuma gbile no le peji moni waja le non pe ngo obi oyili ke bua mo efe ke jo ombi Allahu ake kan ne kliki jo mo edromo ke mo na mashinke bagbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam no ke me fe ni banye iseye anokwale jamo ni ji islamic ashi wose na gbile no ni agbene islam hijelango assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh no jingamo ninke nga tribule fe ni se ochile hini woke woni kasemo ba waji woke wo kwegbejiano ni wo ba anye woto ni no ba wa ke ha wo bi ni amba atwon gbeken bi papae klenklen ni kasemo no wona eje woke bu nyawo elo bu chata denche isake oyigbe ni jano no dane obi ye hun kaji nyumba asumo amba yi na kan gbe no ni ji enyo wo ke wonte wo na bi papae wo hi fatalo ata omomi lo ba atwan ake yo ne intawo nke hinshin lo nu ne intawo nke hinshin wo ke woni kasemo ba waje no ba shehini Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu ebiame ebalake gbeken ku ke echata ewie basbasa ni eyi ichata na keba Umar bin Khattab hi ni Umar bila ke obenyumo gbe ise molo ole ake sako ke wu ke bula ho folo ni ibi Umar bin Khattab ake be me ni gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ewie ne ani echon boni folo ehun isaka amechosi amebi amehalo ni Umar bin Khattab de bagbala na kan wie mo me jemeji hini woko ni kasemo ba wa nyise uchile ne mene wo ba chano ke ba jeje. We are grateful to Almighty Allah for having kept us through the previous week till now. We ask him to continue to share his peace and blessings on the noblest of the prophets Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his household, his companions, and all those who follow him in righteousness to the day of reckoning. Just by way of recapping where we ended our discussion or our lesson last week so that we continue therefrom. We got to a point where we said we are looking at the practical steps that we have to take in order for us to have good children. And we said the first one is that you must rectify your own self. You must be on the right path so that your children will also come and emulate that example. Secondly, we spoke about your choice of a spouse, choosing the most suitable partner. We spoke about an incident that occurred or happened during the rulership of Umar bin Khattab, where a son had abused the father and had been reported to Umar bin Khattab. So Umar asked him whether he did not have the fear of Allah for him to have assaulted the father. And he also asked Umar whether Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not speak about how parents should bring up their children. And after Umar had enumerated all those things, then the boy said, my father had not done that. I'm sure if you get a copy of last week's episode, you get the full story, because time is not on our side, and I just want to continue from where we got to. When you saw Chile abalake wo chonju ni isaake bonu okehinshi shi yo hu emenu ji moni sando okehinshi ke oba hadith ole na chola ke Ibn Majah ke Tirmidhi mi gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ewie mo ko yejende ke kejinu ni ija anyumbo eyenyumbo gbe ishemu eye suban papa ni ebi ni nyekenye bi yo ahalek blanchin le nyebo amode ni nyekele ahalek blanchin le bona fe ni ifon fe mu akaya no yeshpono. So in the case of a woman choosing who becomes her spouse, because last week we spoke about the man making a choice about marrying a virtuous woman instead of marrying just an ordinary woman who is the most beautiful, who is resourceful, who comes from a good lineage. We said the Prophet ﷺ said we should marry a virtuous woman, someone who is committed to her religion. So we've spoken about that. Now, in the case of a woman, who must she marry. So in the hadith that you can see or you can find in Ibn Majah and Tirmizi, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said that if someone whose religion and character you are pleased with should seek the hand of your daughter in marriage, you should give her to him for marriage in order to prevent mischief and widespread corruption on earth. So just as the man will look for a virtuous woman who is committed to her religion, so must the woman also look for a man who is very religious and who has a good character. These are these, because of time, we cannot explain it in detail. So it means it is one thing saying you are religious, you are committed to your religion, where anytime we have to pray, we see you in the masjid, but your character is at variance with what Islam teaches. So that is why the Prophet emphasized that if someone whose religion and character, so these are two things. There's a different thing, say I'm a Muslim, I pray 5 times a day, but your character does not show or does not portray you as a believer. So the Prophet said, if someone whose religion and character you are pleased with should seek the hand of your daughter in marriage, give her to him in order to avoid mischief and widespread corruption on earth. Noni jiete nyombo dromo na ona ngakpakpa, nyombo dromo na ona wu pakpa wo wie bi a chose mo ni Islam wo chon ona ke ntwan ke boden che klenklen okoye ba yigbe ni jano noni ji enyo o ba to ngakpakpa lo ba to wu pakpa noni jiete da fla che ke yu eba ni nona atun dani afọ onyo tuna kan ni biko eba jemi ewo bemi ni bole namo baba okeyu ne te ndenche isa kenyeche nyumbo gbei yejeme ewo Islam ke wake eneke oba Sahih Buhari oba na em, oba Sahih Muslim oba na em, oba Abu Dawud mi oba na wie mo na em, na ke no ko ba Ibn Majah ke Tirmizi mi oba na wie mo na wo na hadith ikpa anisai page no ni ona na ke wie shi enu mo fen ni she ko baje oba na wie mo na ke gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ke dani wo ke wo ifatalo ba na bole wo ba ke ne ke solemone ne mimba machita e biene ene kasemo obote glanchin le me afi nyumo enyo son ne afi enumo afi eten afi komene o so he no ya bote glanchin le ake muslime isake uli ne me fenja islame ta flache ko bote kuncho mimpo ayegbe no na atwon na ke boti omi ni ko jeku ekuncho mi hu ayegbe no na atwon na ke jiopo ko bote masjide ayegbe no na atwon na ke boti omi na kan no ko jeku ayegbe no na atwon na ke akejiopo wo Islam igbala no fe no mi etwon ficho ate shi keke ni taflacho okebodenche odwemo lo itwon fi Islam boni ato higbejiano na kan jiboni afiole odane bole namo baba okoe fatalotie ne ke solemone jino ni oba ke be fembi ni bole namo yaba okay bismillahi Allahumma janibna shaitan wa janibi shaitana ma razaktana okay minje bole namo ne shishin ye nyumbo gba me nyumbo fo nke fatalo afaban keje abunsandi ni keji aleno oba dro wo biko ke chone ken bole namo ne mi bile lo biye eja ke mukwe ni yo afi kumishike ya afo ba afo haji enyo haji ete haji ejwe haji enu ewo nyumbo bile lo biye ni oba dro wo ke chon ne ken bole namo ne hu mi fo na kan bile lo na kan biye he afaban keje abunsandi ene hamatim yeke bismillahi Allahumma jannibna shaitan wa janibi shaitana ma razaktana duwa wene koto mazide bi imama ke ofane Sheikh radio na ake gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ka ake shi Islam ni dando ko ifatalo ba na bole aye solemo kuna ko ofane chomo me inli na kanji boni akasioni lokaji ona audio ona ke minwie mo le ale fast o mo ka je radio no poden chen yo inwie lo ya na bi e hu fa e wo ke bu audio to jogba poden chen oba anya no transcribe oma. So the third thing you have to do in the issue of child upbringing in Islam is to mention the name of Allah at the time of sexual intercourse. So there is a special supplication you have to say every time you have sex with your partner. And as I indicated in the Ghana language, Islam has explained in detail how to go about every aspect of our life. So that even when you are entering the washroom, there is a way you have to enter and there is a supplication you have to say. When you are coming out, exiting from the washroom, there is a way you have to exit and there is a supplication you have to say. Whatever you are doing, at the time you commence your eating, there is a supplication you say. At the end of it, all those things have been explained in detail. And it behoves you and I that we learn it so that we can practice it as Islam teaches. So we are talking about how to get a good child to follow the tenets of Islam. The third step is that you must mention the name of Allah at the time of having sexual intercourse. And there is a supplication that you have to say. And what is this supplication? The supplication is simple. It runs as follows. Bismillahi, Allahumma jannibna shaitan wa jannibi shaitana ma razaqtana. Very simple. That I begin this process of sexual intercourse in the name of Allah. Oh Allah, protect me and my spouse from the devil. And should you bestow anything on us from this sexual intercourse, protect whatever you bestow on us from shaitan, from the devil. Because it is possible that your wife may take seed after that intercourse. So you are seeking protection for yourself and your spouse, and you are seeking protection for the offspring that may come as a result of this sexual intercourse. And I said, if you refer to Sahih Bukhari, if you refer to Sahih Muslim, if you refer to Abu Dawud, if you refer to Ibn Majah and Tirmizi, you see this supplication in those books of hadith. So if you don't know it, get close to your imam, inquire from your imam you want to learn it, or any scholar who truly knows Islam, not someone who says, I've been praying for 5 years, I've been praying for 10 years, I've been praying for 30 years, but doesn't know what Islam is. So go to someone who truly knows the religion and learn this from the person. Noniji ejwe otawani onabi papa nigbeke ebanye nyumbo jamon le no agbene sa ke ofi duao eja ke bole namo eba ukohe fata lote agbene sa ke obi nyumbo koni ihabo bi papa ta ke Ibrahim alayhi salam dalo Abraham ke ta ke balo Zakaria alayhi salam amefi duao ni amebi nyumbo isako kase ne ken duao ne ni ofi be fin bi meniji duao ne meniji ne ken Solomon Ibrahim alayhi salam e duao ne fi ni itawo bi pakwa ke Rabbi habli mina salihin nyumbo min sumo no dro me bi shi dro mo me bi ni ye nyumbo gbe yeshemu bi hechelo ni ibana shifimo ye nyumbo jamo me duao ene ko ba suratu Safat Quran chapter 37 verse 100. Quran icho ni nyumete ke pa okuku ni juha obana ne ke Solomon ye jeme Rabbi habli mina salihin no ji duao ni Ibrahim alayhi salam ifi bemi ni itawo inabi papa. Zakaria alayhi salam lehu ifi duao ko ba suratu Ali Imran Quran icho ni jite kuku ni jinyumai ite ke panyo Quran chapter 3 verse 38 lehu isoli yeje ke Rabbi habli min ledunka zuriyatan tayyibatan innaka anta samiu du'a ike nyumbo minsmo ni odro mi bi keje bodencho ongo mini wo minsmo ni matiwie mo na meja ke mokwe ni ke nge hishi afi inumo afi nyuma afo ake o wati wone na wati bie ne ni wata wo bie je keke na gbe ba chonsande baba o ihale be mi no wojini kase mo ne nji wo fe ile fan ye bia me ko me ni nyumbo ha kwa me bie ko ihan ame bie ko ewo hando hi ahinyumbo jamono no kan no bi nyumbo ona me enyo ne ni nchi ameta na ni ji Ibrahim alayhi salam kwamo afia abo ni eyi dani nyumbo drole bi afi nyuma ipa anyo ke ipa 86 years fe eka ke ya wonko no na ne ya tawo bi eje me eka ke ya heko kulu ne ya tawo bi shi ehin ka nyumbo no ni isole Zakaria alayhi salam nyumbo gbalo ni osofo nupa ajile afi baba o eke ngaye enakobi shi dueke rabbi habli min ledun kazuriyatan tayyibatan nyumbo min sumoni bodenche o hami bi pakpa innaka anta samiu dua eja ke bo nyumbo boji moni obuo wo fai pamo wo nibi mo obuo tui iwo nyumbo drumo mi bi pakpa. The fourth thing you and I would have to do if we want to have good children is to supplicate to Allah after you have had sexual intercourse with your partner and had prayed to Allah that he should protect you and your spouse and whatever he bestows on you as a result of that sexual intercourse. You take another step further by supplicating to Allah. And I've mentioned 2 supplications you and I would have to learn and recite it abundantly. There are some other supplications that I may refer to by the end of this program, or if I'm not able to, inshallah, I'll mention them next week. I mentioned 3 of them when we were discussing the sacrifice of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but I'll re-emphasize those supplications today, or inshallah I may do so next week. So I'm looking at the supplications said by or made by Ibrahim alayhi salam and Zakaria alayhi salam. So in the case of Ibrahim alayhi salam, this was how he supplicated to Allah. He said, Rabbi habli minas salihin. Oh Allah, I want you to grant me a righteous child. I want you to grant me a righteous child. You can see this supplication in Quran chapter 37 verse 100. Learn it. If you already know it, recite it abundantly if you want to have good children. And it will also help you in rectifying the lifestyles, the behavior of your children. And then the supplication of Zakaria alayhi salam. This was how he supplicated to Allah. He said, Rabbi habli min ledunka zuriyatan tayyibatan innaka anta samiu dua. That, oh my Lord, grant me a good offspring from yourself, because you are the one who listens to all supplications or the request that we make to you. That is the 4th step. So manyeme okase duao ni akehifata lo na ofi ne ken duao ne no so obi nyumba ake nyumbo e dromo mebi o he ba ni o e fatalo e wetele ehie ho ogbeko na ai agbene ne ken duao ne o ba akase no fi shi yo etitri ji money sane e kase duao ne mimba machitane ko ni be mi no na ake owo tele ohie musun o kane ne ken duao ne ke ashi nyumbo dromo na o ba akple ke hwehwe e wo ene e ya ke ha wo ngame wo bi ye wo nyeme ye wo mamime e ya ke hanye ona ke be mi ni hanat niji Isa alayhi salam ina Yesu Kristo nyumbo hejole ahale ina nifo inyawo be mi ni ina hie imame ni ji Mariam ho duao ni ifi ene ka oba Quran echo ni ji ite kuku ni ji nyuman ite ke enumo. Quran chapter 3 verse 35. Ni bemi ni uhie ho isaake ukase ne ke doa one ni ofi bemi ni uhie ho. Bemi ni hanat hie Maryam ho doa one efie ne ke Rabbi inni nazartu laka ma fi batni muharraran fatakabbal minni innaka anta samiul alim. Eke Rabbi inuncho inni nazartu laka ma fi batni ona musue noni yo musune mi intu wodi muharraran ke ha osuomo keji ubahane mafo hwehwehwe fatakabbal minni ine wo min kpabo fai bonin tu musune in wodi momin ni ohele nakan ohami innaka anta samiul alim ejake boji moni onu ni boji moni ule no fe no wo yo ebe mi no owu telie ne ke doa one isaake gbokegbe na o kane ne ke doa one ke ashike ji nyuma asomo o ba kleke hwehwehwe. So the next step, after you had learned the supplication at the time of sexual intercourse, and after you had supplicated to Allah to grant you a righteous child, fortunately, you take seed. Fortunately, you have conceived. You are pregnant. Now you must dedicate the pregnancy to Allah for his divine protection. Just as Hannah, the grandmother of Isa alayhi salam, did, and it has been reported in Quran chapter 3 verse 35. He supplicated to Allah by saying what I'm just about reciting. He said, Rabbi inni nazartu laka ma fi batni muharraran fatakabbal minni innaka anta samiul alim. He said, Oh my Lord, I do dedicate unto thee what is in my womb for thy special service. So accept this of me, for thou hearest and knowest all things. Quran chapter 3 verse 35. So it means even before the fetus become a child, you have dedicated it to Allah for his protection and for him to make that child a virtuous child when he or she is delivered. Nyongbo dromo na ohi fatalo ifo. Ni ifo mini jino ni abafi. Tomboni Sheikh Ibn Qayyum al-Jawzi rahimahullah ewiye based on hadith ni gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam keba abache azan keba wo gbekin tu emi be pio no ni mekumeke o abache azan keba wo tu ejono na abache azan abache ikama keba wo abekwe shiton boni Sheikh Nasiruddin Albani gbalame ike no ni ke acho ikama ke wo abekwe na kan hadith ko by the chain of narrators say it is 40 somehow. She what is not in dispute ji abache azan keba wo gbekin tu emi azan noji boni wocho ke wonya wa soli ni nyenu akọ be fen be ni Sheikh Ibn al-Qayyim ke e ha klen wie mo ni gbeken nuoji nyumbo wie mo ke ni a cheme ke ha nyumbo jamo ke ni a cheme ke ha kuni yileja ke azane ka che ikiku aka ke nyeba ja nyumbo nyeba nyekenye yaba wa kuni yelimi nyumbo jamo no jino ni ke kuni yeli ba wo gbeken klen wie mo na enuoji a cheme ni aba ja nyumbo a cheme ni akehiaba wo kuni yeli mi. Fortunately, you have been delivered of your baby safely. You are sound, you are alive, your baby is also alive. Now this is what you have to do. The next step is the saying or the calling of the azan in the ear of the child. Sometimes you hear scholars say or write that you call the azan into the right ear and the ikama into the left ear. But Sheikh Nasiruddin Albani, who was an authority on hadith in terms of authenticating the hadith by way of the chain of narrators, said the one that said the ikama is called into the left ear is 40 by way of the chain of narrators. But the one that is not in dispute is that the azan is called into the ear of the child. And like Sheikh Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi rahimahullah said, it makes the first sound that resonates in the ear of the baby that of the azan. And you know the wording of the azan. At a point, the muazzin says, come to worship Allah. And he says, come for that which will lead you to success. So you are introducing the child at that stage to the fact that it is the worship of Allah that leads to success, or that brings about success. So the child is introduced to that. Noniji ikpa boni Islam chonke hangbe kembi a chosemo acha azane bile no abafe no kuna chola ke tahnik miniji tahnike bekene e following lo abata wo mokoni eye nyumbo gbeye shemu ni eye nili ni ibata a metrobi ni keji ita beken tenloe ni ikeba shono energy no ni achola ke tahnik energy no ni afi yesuna mi boni balo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ichonwo ake wofi. So the 6th step that to be taken towards making the child to be on the path of Islam is what is known as the tahnik. So what is the tahnik? The parents can do it themselves, or if there is someone who is known for his righteousness, his piety, then that person will chew a date and then apply it on the child's gum. This is what is known as tahnik. That was what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. That was what the companions did, and that is what Islam has bequeathed to us. This is done the very day the child is born, or if for whatever reason it couldn't be done on that day, within the shortest possible time, it should be done. Agbene afi tahnike noni hihia ni baba eko ni jikpa wo enoji ni abaha gbeke gbei papa ni abaha gbeke gbei papa gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam echon wo ake gbei ni nyumbo sumo kejibile nu ni ekoji Abdullah, Abdurrahman, Abdullah nyumbo nyong, Abdurrahman drolo nyong ejake Arrahman nyumbo gbene leji drolo. Alo abaha gbekene abaha le gbaloi ni ehue ekugbei lo hecheloi ni ale amegbei ake ekubawu gbeken. So the next one, as we learned from the case of Hafash or Jal, as we indicated here last week, the one who assaulted his father. The Prophet ﷺ said, there are 3 responsibilities that are incumbent upon every parent towards his child. 1, giving the child a good name. 2, giving the child good education. And 3, ensuring that he or she gets into marriage when he or she is matured to marry. So the next stage is to give the child a good name. And the Prophet ﷺ suggested some names in the case of a male child, like Abdullah, said the names that Allah loves most are Abdullah, the servant of Allah, Abdur Rahman, the servant of the most gracious. You could also name your child after the prophets. And you can name your child after a virtuous person. So you must give the child a good name, so that you don't go and name your child with a name that is repulsive, that is very bad, so that the child does not behave in that way. Because the names that we give to our children, they have an impact on their lives. Keke noni nyeseji noni achola ke akika. Akika aji oba agbe kolo oba shanfole yegbeken enajiam boni sunna ke woji keji bile binu ni oye hiwale benuele oba agbe to enyo keji biyo ni to kome mko abe ni kembe shike ko hwe ko be shike ko enyo ewo na kanja twen keji ono je no ni be ko wote akora ko ni wa ahye ni me ko wa bi wa ko paako amebatu bashin malamfo eni yo je ke wa akene afo ameke wo islam ni paako ambatu ba sana aha amegbe wo sana agbeto ke ha mo fine da bi je na kanji bo ni islam ke ko be Abubakar meke ni bi fin ba agbeto aha me da bi je na kanji bo ni islam ke wo keji ni namo ekoye nuwe aba agbeto enyo ni biyo aba agbeto kome. The next step is what is known as the akika, where a sacrificial animal is offered for and on behalf of the child. So in the case of a male child, if you are resourceful, then you slaughter 2 sheep. If you are not resourceful, then you sacrifice 1. In the case of a female child, you sacrifice 1 sheep. And where the resources are not available, Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. So Allah has taken off that responsibility off your shoulder. Agbene noni jinehu inche Solomon ni woba sole wo ha wo biye ne jameji heni ekwe wo biye fen ke woba atako ni gbeno chikeji nyuma asmo wo chano ke duawe keke agbene wo kwe the psychological and spiritual upbringing of the children. Ewo esake wo sole wo ha ame taake hanat fi iha ibi Maryam bemi ni ifole ke oba Qur'an emi eke wa inni samaituha Maryama wa inni uhizuha wa zuriyatiha mina shaitani rajim eke enyumbo ni gbeke inwole ake Maryam ni Yesu mami bemi ni nafo Yesu mami eke ni inwole Maryam ni mintule ke woding ke ebi ni ofua mehe afaban keje abonsande ni tomboni Ibrahim alayhi salam lehu efi ha ebi Ismail ke Isaac ke boni gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam le denche hu efi ha inabi neji Hassan ke Hussein wo ke gbeke binu ni obake uizuka bikalimati llahi tamati min kulli shaytanin wa hamatin wa min kulli aini lama. So like Maryam was prayed for by her mom, and this is captured in Quran chapter 3 verse 36. It says, wa inni samaituha Maryam, and I have named her Maryam. Wa inni uhizuha bika wa zuriyatiha mina shaitan rajim, and I have dedicated her. I seek your protection for her and her children from Satan the accursed. That was the supplication Hannah made for her daughter. And like Ibrahim alayhi salam also did for his sons, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did for his grandchildren. So if the child is a male, you say uizuka. If the child is a female, uizuki bi kalimati lahi tamati min kulli shaytanin wa hamatin wa min kulli ainin lam. That is, I seek refuge for you through the perfect words of Allah from every devil and poisonous pest, and from every evil and envious eye. So these are the supplications. Inshallah, next week when we are live and we meet, we'll look at three or four important good supplications that we have to make constantly. Even if you have stopped giving birth, you have to make it for the rectification of your children. Alaji.